Hotly contested Florida races 1 week later. Welcome back to America's Newsroom. I'm Sandra Smith. 1 week from Election Day, and the drama continues.
It is
Good
a Tuesday.
morning.
I'm Bill Emmer. Good morning. The recount is underway. Off to a bit of a slow start. Broward County, Thursday's deadline looming. Incumbent Democratic Senator Bill Nelson calling his Republican opponent, current Governor Rick Scott, to recuse himself from the recount. But for his part, Scott says he wants to ensure a fair and accurate vote election.
My goal is to make sure that this is done properly. That's why I've asked the FDLE to come in and do an investigation. The Attorney General are demanded that happen. I've asked the sheriffs to be vigilant. We want to make sure we have a free and fair election.
Griff Jenkins live in Lauderhill, Florida with more. Hey, Griff, good morning. Where do we stand? Griff, we're going to hang with you a moment here. If we got him, we'll go live on the air. Hang with it one moment. Griff, where do we stand right now? 11 a.m. East Coast time there. Good morning.
The count has started. This is a little confusing. Let me take you into the tabulation room. Now, we were separating these page one ballots before they were going to do the actual recount, but the actual recount is underway for the early votes. This is about 200,000 early ballots that were separated yesterday. It is actually happening right now. You're looking at the machines running this early vote batch. And actually, if you look at the manila envelopes on top of the machines, those are the over and under votes that have already been separated. They are being separated for the purpose of a manual recount that they anticipate should the total vote count, if they meet the total deadline on Thursday of a recount, the under and over votes will be used in a manual recount if the margin is under that 0.25%. And we've also got some news with regards to the supervisor of elections here, Dr. Brenda Snipes. Of course, we saw Governor Jeb Bush, former Florida governor, tweeting that there's no question that Supervisor Snipes failed to comply with Florida law on multiple counts. But we just moments ago, Ivana Moore, our producer, asked Supervisor Snipes to respond to the Jeb tweet, and she says she heard that Jeb wants me out, but that's his opinion, and he can't take that. She can't take a person's opinion away. Her opinion, Snipes said, is that we have run a good election program for our voters during my tenure. So a count has started with the early votes. They've yet to count the day of election votes and the mail-in votes. We'll see if that happens before Thursday. It looks like they hope to do so, but also the supervisor responding to a lot of accusations and a call for her removal from Governor Jeb Bush. By the way, Snipes' tenure, it's an elected position, isn't up until 2020.
Thank you, Griff,
Bill,
for hanging in there. Griff Jenkins. Thanks, Sandra.
All right, for more on all this, let's bring in Chris Starwalt, Fox News politics editor. Chris, weigh in on things as they stand at this moment. We are awaiting the final vote count in some of these hotly contested Florida races. Your thoughts?
We are so far outside of the normal tolerances for how a race might be overturned in a recount. We are, for perspective, we are 13,300 votes wider of a margin than have ever been overturned in a recount. The idea that Scott would be ultimately defeated here because of the recount it's not a zero probability, but it is close to a zero probability. We're talking about low probability events. And what's unfortunate is the degree of vitriol, the degree of anger, the upset, and the accusations, in some cases totally baseless, that are being made about something that is quite probably a very moot point.
You know, I'm just looking at this Time magazine headline. Here it is. Florida's vote counting controversy spells trouble for 2020. Chris, what are the implications for the next presidential election based on what we are seeing now?
Well, look, it is clear the Broward County, which is the Broward and Palm Beach counties, are the two largest troves of Democratic votes. These are huge numbers of Democratic voters that are in these counties, and they also have a history of being terrible at administering elections. What Jeb Bush is saying is that after the election, it was Jeb Bush who appointed her, by the way, to replace the last person who was catastrophically bad in making sure that elections were counted and that the results were determined without all this falderall. So she was an emergency pick to replace another person who had problems. And she, too, now the new governor can remove her. He can remove her for cause. even before her term in office runs. The idea that Florida, which was very close in 2016, that was less than a point for Donald Trump, we would expect it to be very close again. The idea that we could have a 2020 election hanging on Florida with this sort of uncertainty. And we've already seen the allegations that are out there. We've already seen what's gone on in terms of accusations of fraud and other things. This raises some very unhappy possibilities, especially when you're talking about an incumbent who in the past has said that he would be willing to not accept the outcome of an election.
Very interesting. And by the way, the Sun Sentinel newspaper compiled Brenda Snipes' history of election troubles. And they went on to detail broke federal law when posting 2016 primary election results online before polls closed. Goes on to other details, including 1,000 uncounted ballots discovered a week after 2012 election. 2004, some 58,000 mail-in ballots were not delivered to voters, leaving election officials to scramble to send new ones. So things are off to a slow start. The Thursday deadline looms. Where does this go? What happens next, Chris?
So you see now in Georgia to the north that we're in the court phase, right? Now we're heading into, well, this suit, and then we'll block you from closing it there, and we'll do the other thing. But again, I just want to say, for Republicans, the idea that a 13,607, I believe, vote advantage for Rick Scott would be erased in a recount is pretty preposterous. The net outcome for Republicans still stands likely as +2 seats in the Senate, that they're going to get Scott in there, and it's going to happen. He's going to be up here in Washington this week doing freshman orientation with others, including Kristen Sinema from Arizona, and that's going to be part of the story. What we have to hope here is that we get through the remainder of this recount and that both sides can keep their heads about them and remember that there are larger considerations here than just being on TV and scoring the last dig on the other side.
Very interesting stuff. Chris Steiwell, good to have you on this morning. Thank you very much, sir.
You bet.
Fox News
County, as the two candidates in the Florida Senate race continue to spar. So how long could this go on? And will Governor Scott have to recuse himself? We'll hear from an election law attorney who worked with the Romney campaign.
Also, state of Maryland going to court over President Trump's appointment of Matthew Whitaker as acting attorney general, saying he's not legitimate to replace Jeff Sessions. Former U.S. Attorney Andy McCarthy will address all of that coming up shortly.
So far as conflicts, he has no conflict. There's no reason for him to recuse himself. There's reason to be hesitant about his authority, but there's no reason for him to recuse himself based on statements he made earlier.
Have been advised that CNN has filed a complaint challenging the suspension of Jim Acosta's hard pass. This is just more grandstanding from CNN, and we will vigorously defend against this lawsuit. The First Amendment is not served when a single reporter of more than 150 present attempts to monopolize the floor. If there is no check on this type of behavior, it impedes the ability of the president, the White House staff, and members of the media to conduct business.
The governor is not responsible for recounts. We have separately elected supervisor elections in each county. They do the recounts, and then the numbers are sent to the Secretary of State's office for just to put out the statewide numbers. The governor is not involved. Now, my goal is that we follow the law.
Rick Scott there talking about the response to the call from the Democratic Senator Bill Nelson to recuse himself from the recount because he's governor. And you heard the answer there. Nelson accusing the Republican challenger of using his power as governor to undermine the voting process. What about that? And where are we? Charlie Speets, attorney and election law expert, Irvine, California today. Charlie, how you doing? I know you work for Mitt Romney in your political life, et cetera, and on it goes. Where do you think we stand right now in Florida as you look at it from your position there in California?
Bill, I've been involved in multiple recounts around the country, and the key point is that even in the one recount I was involved in Washington State with Dino Rossi, where the results changed, are insurmountable. So you're seeing a lot of legal wrangling. You've got, all my friends that are lawyers in Florida are going to have good Christmases.
They're making money.
The reality is
right. But Charlie, yeah. But here's the possibility now. Do you know how many ballots were cast in Broward County in 2018?
Well, you've hit upon the problem with what Supervisor Snipes has done and why former Governor Bush has said who actually appointed her in 2003, has said she needs to be removed from office. We don't know the exact universe, but we do know that the deadlines have passed for ballots to be in.
You do understand why that is such a fundamental and critical question, right? Because on election night into Wednesday morning, a week ago tomorrow, it was 675, 695, 700, 715. And the question then is, where does it stop?
Well, Bill, the good news is that there's deadlines coming up. And as of Thursday, the automatic recount results are going to need to be submitted. The Democrats, Mark Elias, who's a very good attorney, but he's going to pull out all the stops to try to get Bill Nelson over an insurmountable hump. And the only way he does that is by opening up new universes of voters. So that's what the Democrats are in court trying to do, is change the rules to allow different groups of ballots that have already past the deadline come in and expand that universe of possible votes.
Should we know roughly what the answer to that question is, what the number is?
Well, of course we should. There's 67 counties in Florida, and in 65 of them, they got their votes in time and were able to tell us the universe of ballots out there. Only 2 counties, Broward and Palm Beach County, couldn't get their act together and couldn't give us answers on how many actual ballots there were. But at this point, once we got past Saturday, when the first votes were counted, we have a defined universe unless that gets changed by courts.
Okay, last point here. Doug Schoen writes opinion piece at foxnews.com. Here's what he says with regard to the ballot issues down there. The issues in Broward County increasingly do not seem to be an issue with ballot counting, but rather a human error in terms of the actual ballot layout. Similar to the election in 2000, poor ballot design may have resulted in thousands of voters missing the section of the ballot featuring the Senate candidates altogether. Those blank ballots, in addition to the Senate race being less than 0.25 points, make the case for a recount all the more important. I think the question there is, whose fault is it if you design a bad ballot? Weren't we there 18 years ago with that butterfly ballot in Southeast Florida?
We were, and that's an easy answer. It's Supervisor Snipes' fault. But I think we need to get past fault and look about getting a fair and just result to the election that people can have confidence in. And there's no indication that even if the ballot design was problematic, that the results would come in or be changed to a level. Nelson got 69% of the vote in Broward County. Even if the undervotes came through to him on the ballots at a 69% ratio, that would not be enough votes to change the results of the election.
So you think DeSantis is governor and Rick Scott's the senator?
I absolutely do.
Okay. Charlie, thanks for coming in. Charlie Speets in California today. Nice to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Under the tightest security, a notorious Mexican drug lord goes on trial in New York City. We are live at the courthouse with an update on the El Chapo case next.
Also, new details on the brutal murder of Jamal Khashoggi, what audio tapes of the crime may possibly reveal.
We gave the tapes. We gave them to Saudi Arabia, to the United States, Germans, French, and British. All of them. They have listened to all the conversations in them. They know.
And new details emerging in the death of columnist and Saudi dissident Jamal Khashoggi. An audio tape of Khashoggi's last minutes revealing some gruesome details of his death. Turkey says it shared that recording with several countries, including Saudi Arabia, which is suspected of carrying out the killing. Greg Palcott live in London with more on this. Greg.
Hi, Sandra. We could be as close as we'll ever get to a smoking gun in the killing of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi last month. The New York Times today, quoting 3 different sources familiar with the recording made at the time, says that one of those at the Istanbul Saudi consulate after the killing of Khashoggi telephoned the right-hand man of Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and said, "Tell your boss." Also said, the deed is done. Turkey has said it believes that the killing was approved at the highest levels of the Saudi government. Still, Saudis who have heard the tape, it has been shared with several countries, including the United States, say they didn't hear that specific remark. And National Security Advisor John Bolton today said the tape doesn't seem to indicate that the Crown Prince is involved. Whatever, more leaks point to a truly grisly killing. Khashoggi apparently complained about a bag being put over his head before he was killed, saying he was claustrophobic. Turkish President Erdogan today called the details of the killing atrocious. Now, at a leaders' lunch on Sunday in Paris, Erdogan spoke with President Trump about the investigation. And the president has said there could be more from the White House this week. Finally, Sandra, Turkish officials are reportedly no longer looking for the body of Khashoggi. They are saying, again, according to reports, that the body parts were disposed of, actually dissolved, using a chemical, maybe acid, on the very grounds of the Saudi consulate. Ugly, ugly stuff. Back to you.
Greg Palcott, thank you.
Arizona's made history electing its first female senator and also flipping that state from blue to red. First time in decades. We're live with that story in a moment. Plus, there is a state now taking the appointment of acting AG Matthew Whitaker to court. They say he's not legitimate, but Andrew McCarthy, the former U.S. attorney, will argue that case coming up live next. News alert now. Big historic win for Democrats. Late last night, Arizona Republican Martha McSally conceding the Senate race to Kyrsten Sinema, flipping Jeff Flake's old seat, becoming the first woman to represent Arizona in the U.S. Senate. Alicia Cooney is live in that story. She's in Phoenix today yet again. Alicia, good morning there.
Hi, good morning, Bill. Yes, and the senator-elect wasting no time this morning on Twitter. Democrat Kyrsten Sinema posted a photo of the Capitol Hill Dome, writing, "Back in D.C., headed to the first day of Senate school. I'm overcome with gratitude. Thank you, Arizona. It's the privilege of my life to represent you." Not long after the Associated Press projected her win, Sinema thanked supporters here in Arizona last night, telling them she will be an independent voice, using the late Senator John McCain as a guiding light.
Senator John McCain stood for everything we stand for as Arizonans. Fighting for what you believe in, standing up for what's right, even if you stand alone, and serving a cause that is greater than oneself. Senator McCain is irreplaceable, but his example will guide our next steps forward.
Republican Congresswoman Martha McSally did not wait long after the AP made its call, tweeting out her congratulations and concession.
Hey everybody, I just called Kyrsten Sinema and congratulated her on becoming Arizona's first female senator after a hard-fought battle. I wish her all success as she represents Arizona in the Senate. And I also want to say thank you to everybody who supported me in this campaign, my staff and volunteers and everybody who voted for me.
Next in Arizona Senate politics, the seat of the late Senator John McCain. Arizona Governor Republican Doug Ducey named retired Senator John Kyle to fill it, but Kyle only agreed to do this until about the first of the year. Ducey will soon need to name a successor, and political watchers have been discussing the possibility of McSally. The Arizona Republic writing an op-ed, writing Ducey with the stroke of one pen could apply some desperately needed salve to the open, gaping wound that is post-election Arizona. Appoint McSally governor. Bill, Ducey right now not talking about it. Bill.
Lisa, thank you. Lisa Cunha is live in Phoenix on that. 32 past the hour now.
Attorney General Matthew Whitaker facing a court challenge as Maryland prepares to ask a federal judge today for an injunction, arguing the job rightfully belongs to Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. Here's former Attorney General Michael Mukasey earlier on this program.
The president can fill certain vacancies only with the advice and consent of the Senate. The Attorney General position is one of those. Now, the question is whether somebody who is acting Attorney General would have to be somebody who's been confirmed, and there are people available who have been confirmed.
And Andy McCarthy is a former U.S. attorney and a Fox News contributor, and he joins us now. So good morning to you, by the way.
Good
first
morning.
Is Whitaker, in your view, a legitimate pick?
I think he's a legitimate pick in terms of what his background is. He's certainly qualified for the job. Now, there's a significant legal dispute. One side says that because he's temporary, that he's not a principal officer under the Constitution, and therefore he can't take the position because he hasn't been confirmed by the Senate. There's longstanding Justice Department advice for the proposition that if you're a temporary person, you're not a principal officer, and therefore you don't need Senate confirmation. It's one of these legal issues that has not been resolved.
So now this goes to court. What happens now? Maryland seeking an injunction to block this appointment.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if Maryland got the injunction, because there's issues about whether they're well suited to bring the case or not. But eventually this will have to get teed up and decided. And I think, you know, there's a chance that President Trump could supersede it simply by naming a next attorney general and perhaps doing some shifting at the Justice Department that would put Whitaker in a place where his position was less contested.
So Maryland is making the case that this position rightfully belongs to the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. What is the case that they are making? What is the case that the state is making?
Well, that the next ranking Justice Department official in the chain of command who has gotten the advice and consent of the Senate is the Deputy Attorney General. But, you know, Sandra, it's one thing to say that they can say that if the Justice Department is going to take action that affects Maryland, it's got to be done in a constitutionally proper way. They don't get to pick who the Attorney General is. So if the president, for example, decided to slide, let's say, a U.S. attorney in who he has appointed and who has gotten the advice and consent of the Senate, he could do that. If he wanted to appoint the Solicitor General who's gotten the advice and consent of the Senate, he could do that. Maryland's position, their strong legal position, could be that Whitaker is not qualified because he hasn't been confirmed. They don't get to pick who they slide in.
That makes this point very interesting from this law professor, Stephen Vladeck at the University of Texas Law School. He writes an op-ed in the New York Times saying, quote, that the president can name temporary department heads without Senate confirmation is more than just a legal fine point. In many settings, it can be important to the effective functioning of government. A contrary rule could cause major headaches for a new president confronted with vacancies across the senior levels of management. Contrast that with what Michael Mukasey said earlier on this program. Listen.
The problem here is that if it turns out that an acting attorney general is a principal officer and Matt Whitaker has not been confirmed by the Senate in any position, then anything he does that could be done only by a confirmed attorney general is void. There are some things that can be done that can be delegated to somebody else. Those things would be perfectly valid.
Everything you're saying suggests that he's got a problem here.
Yes.
How can there be so many contrasting viewpoints on this?
Well, you know, whenever you get something that's not settled, you're always going to have this this run of unintended consequences from it. And I think even Judge Mukasey would say that what he's saying is there's a possibility that if Whitaker's appointment were found to be void, that everything he's done is null and void. There's another school of thought that would say, well, you know, look, we're going to see what was the good faith here. Was there any real damage to anything he did? Did he take an action that somebody else wouldn't have taken? Is what he did ministerial, or was it something that was really policy oriented? It's lawyer stuff. Right?
Finally, I want to end on this point. Ken Starr was our headline earlier today, and he wrapped it up like this.
I know that the Justice Department process works. I served as Chief of Staff to the Attorney General of the United States a century ago during the Reagan administration. And listen, there are processes in place, and then there are checks, and that's the role of the House of Representatives and so forth. But I think the process within the department, with its procedures, with its integrity, will then tell the tale.
He ultimately made the case, we're just going to have to let this play out.
Yeah, well, if you're lucky enough to have Ken Starr as the guy who's helping the Attorney General run the Justice Department, you're in a lot better shape than we may be in at the moment. But, you know, look, what he says, there's a lot of wisdom, as there almost always is in everything he says. It'll work itself out. There's too many ways for it to be worked out properly that this will be a catastrophe. It'll, you know, in a couple of weeks, maybe in a couple of hours, we'll be on to the next thing.
Well, for those of us who are just trying to keep track of it all right now, it's tough.
It is tough.
And I mean, you're an expert on this. All these guys are. Mukasey, and there's a lot to understand here and to look back and see that Rod Rosenstein in the past has heaped praise on the acting AG. Right. That brings a whole nother element to this story.
Yeah, well, look how easy it is to be an expert in something there's no answer to, right? Anytime you're dealing in uncertainty, I don't think anybody should be attacking Whitaker personally or attacking his credentials, which are stellar. This is a narrow legal question about whether advice and consent applies or not. And I don't think that takes away from the fact that whatever he does, he'll do in good faith, and he'll try to do it in the traditions of the Justice Department. And that's why I have faith, like Judge Starr has faith, that it'll be okay.
I want to get to this because we're just learning that Dianne Feinstein, the senator, is now asking the Judiciary Committee to hold some sort of session or meeting with Whitaker and Jeff Sessions. Right. That's about all I could, a hearing, actually. So not a meeting, an actual hearing. Right. Just getting details on that. What do you think, if that's the case, and what that means?
Well, I'm sure they want to raise it. Look, from their perspective, from the Senate's perspective, I would think that they would want to have in place, or that they want it understood that even the acting Attorney General should be someone who the Senate has to approve, because that obviously gives the Senate more suasion over how the Justice Department conducts himself. Why they would want both Sessions and Whitaker there, I assume, will be to probe whatever discussions they may have had, if any, about who would control the Mueller investigation and, what expectations there were in that regard.
So we're left wondering what that hearing might look like if that happens. Andy McCarthy, thank you. It's nice to have you on the program this morning.
My pleasure.
React to all of that for us. Bill?
There is extremely tight security. Trial of Mexican drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. El Chapo pleading not guilty to numerous counts of drug trafficking and money laundering, and Brian Yennis is live outside the U.S. District Court in Brooklyn on that story. Hey, Brian, good morning.
Good morning, Bill. Well, the world's most notorious drug trafficker, Joaquin Guzman, better known as El Chapo or Shorty, faces 17 federal charges for leading the world's largest drug trafficking organization, the Sinaloa cartel, for the past 25 years. If convicted, the 61-year-old man will be sentenced for life in prison. Now, this trial is expected to last about 4 months. Expect prosecutors to tell an intricate story about how El Chapo amassed $14 billion in personal wealth as a drug kingpin. Now, prosecutors say El Chapo ordered the murder of thousands, becoming the top supplier of cocaine, meth, heroin, marijuana in the United States. The evidence includes over 300,000 documents, thousands of wiretap audio recordings, 200 metric tons of seized drugs, and testimonies from dozens of witnesses. Now, one of those witnesses is Jesus Vicente Zambada. The 43-year-old oversaw cartel logistics. He signed a plea deal, and if he cooperates, his sentence could be reduced from life in prison to as little as 10 years. Now, El Chapo famously escaped twice from Mexico's maximum security prisons. Once in 2001 when he escaped in a laundry cart, and again in 2015 when he escaped through a tunnel that was dug into his jail cell. He was recaptured and extradited here in the U.S. Back here at the courthouse, security is extra tight. An armored caravan is bringing him from his solitary confinement jail cell in Manhattan to Brooklyn twice a week. They're shutting down the Brooklyn Bridge to bring him here. By the way, the jury selection's really still happening. Opening statements won't happen till later this afternoon. Bill?
Brian Yannis watching that story from New York City. Thank you, sir. Sandra.
Firefighters battling an inferno in Northern California, now the deadliest wildfire in that state's history. Fierce winds fueling flames there, and rain is still nowhere in sight.
I know a lot of people are interested in when the next rain event will be. We are not seeing any indication of precipitation in the next week and possibly through Thanksgiving.
News alert: crews battling wildfires up and down the state. First responders and those searching for those still unaccounted for on the ground there. Sheriff, thank you for calling in, and our very best to you as your efforts continue.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Tough to listen to, too, as we move through the story. Outnumbers coming up next with Melissa and Lisa. Quick preview of what's coming up there, ladies. Hello.
Hi, Bill. So the stakes are certainly raised in the Florida recount as Arizona Senate race is called for Democrat Kristen Sinema, and as counties across Florida race the clock to meet Thursday's deadline, will they make it? Who will win? And what is all this doing to America's faith in our electoral system?
Well, and plus, Congress Congress is back in session, and that's amid questions about leadership battles, funding President Trump's border wall, and also a possible government shutdown. So we're going to ask Congressman Adam Kinzinger about all of that and more.
Our hashtag One Lucky Guy at the top of the hour. Bill?
See you then. It's not me, is it?
No, it's not you. We'd love to have you, though.
Next time, maybe.
You can't do that anymore. You're
Why?
9 to noon.
Oh, 9 to noon. That's right. Sorry, there's a hashtag for that, isn't
Hi,
there?
Lisa. Hi, Melissa. I'll keep them in line here. Don't worry about it.
Thank you, ladies. See you in 10 minutes. In a moment here, a stunning turnaround. American bishops making a change in their plans to address the clergy, a sexual abuse scandal after a surprising request from the Vatican. The U.S. Catholic Conference of Bishops says it will not take any action to address sexual abuse in the church for at least several months' time. The head of the conference says the Vatican requested that delay. Lauren Green has the story. Lauren, hello.
Well, Bill, they're certainly going to talk about it, though. After yesterday's discernment and prayer, day of discernment and prayer, today the bishops got into the heart of how to concretely deal with the sexual abuse crisis. Now, the bishops this morning heard recommendations from their National Advisory Council and the National Review Board, both supporting the USCCB's call for a full investigation of disgraced Cardinal Theodore McCarrick, accused of a long-term history of abusing seminarians. As you say, the bishops had planned to vote on two crucial measures. One, a code of conduct for bishops, and the other, creating a civilian-led investigative body. But an edict from Rome, some speculate from Pope Francis himself, directed them not to take any action. The bishops were clearly frustrated.
We should not forget that the reason we want to take action is because we want to protect young people and to heal those who have been damaged.
Now, last night, abuse victims made their presence known, holding signs and talking to media. They say they're frustrated and angry that the bishops appear to care more about the church's structure than its people.
We love our church, but it's not the church right now that we love. We need a lot of work. And bishops, I hope this is just the beginning, because we're not going away.
Now, despite the Vatican directive not to vote on the two actions, the bishops plan to debate and discuss them this afternoon. Included in the proposed code of conduct, for instance, the acknowledgement that, quote, some bishops have failed to stop abuse or respond properly to such claims. Bill.
Lauren Green live in Baltimore, Maryland on that. Thank you, Lauren. Sandra?
All eyes on Florida as high-stakes recount heads for a Thursday deadline. So can the process be trusted? Outnumbered's going to take that one on next.